It's time for MacBreak Weekly. We have a lot to talk about. Andy Anako's here, Mikah Sargent from Mobile Nations, and of course we're going to dissect everything we now know about iOS 12, macOS Mojave, watchOS 5, and tvOS. It's all next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 613, recorded Tuesday, June 5th, 2018. Finder Love. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage from Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully, so you can be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. And by 23andMe. Now through Father's Day, get 30% off each 23andMe DNA kit. Go to 23andme.com/twit today. And by Texture. Access the world's most popular magazines anytime, anywhere, using your smartphone or tablet. Go to texture.com/twit to start your free trial today. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple, and today of all days. Today is a special day. Finally, no more rumors, facts. Andy Anako's here from the Chicago.
Formerly of these, Chicago Sun-Times Emeritus.
Formally? I've said it for so many years of the Chicago Sun-Times. Formerly. Now of Anako.com, and soon of somewhere interesting. You said an announcement sometime after WWDC.
Well, okay, technically this is after WWDC, but I'm going to use the Apple Mac Pro / HomePod that, technically speaking, if I say late 2018, I have until December 31st.
You have until the end
before
of the
the ball drops.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Andy. Renee is at the Worldwide Developers Conference. Couldn't join us today, but he sent in his place Mikah Sargent from iMore, or actually from Mobile Nations as well as iMore. It's great to have you, Mikah.
Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, I am no Renee Ritchie, but I will do my best. Let me tell you.
I'm thrilled to have you. So iMore sent everybody, but I guess you got left out, huh?
iMore sent Serenity and Renee, and we have a person who lives in California, our dear friend Lori Gill.
Lori's great. She was there. I saw that.
Isn't she? Yeah. She's fantastic. Yeah. So the three of them are there in person. I got to go, I think it was 2 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. But this time I was working comfortably from my office, making it happen here.
I would love to go as a developer. Not as a journalist. I have to say, yesterday's keynote, while there was a lot of interesting things there, didn't feel like to me it merited a keynote. It was like you could have phoned this one in.
I mean, that's true, but the thing is, this always has been a developer keynote. It basically means that Apple really did spend the last couple of years getting all kinds of hardware out the door. And right now, given the magnitude of a lot of the things that they were talking about, actually seeing confirmation of Marzipan about some sort of code sharing in development between iOS and macOS of iOS's UI kit being ported over to Mac and an app being able to rely on both and being able to basically build an iOS app that will also function really well as a macOS app. That's pretty huge. Addressing speed and stability, that's no small trick. The fact that they were getting, quoting the keynote, because I have not installed the beta on my iPhone 5S yet, but the idea of having a phone as old as the iPhone 5S and not only retaining compatibility, but also having performance enhancements. I know they're mentioning the iPhone 6, but since I've spoken to people who've installed it on older hardware, and it's like for them it's a reason to take this phone out of the drawer from a curio in your lineup of previous purchases to maybe I can actually use this as a smaller iPhone now because it's so fast. So there are it's not as though they didn't have a whole lot to announce. It's just that not a whole lot of it was consumer facing, I think.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Honestly, when Tim Cook took the stage and said, this is an event all about software, I kind of had a little cheer within myself. I guess being a nerd, have always been super into the software stuff. And this is the time when I get to hop into developer.apple.com and like pour over that documentation and dig into it and see what's new and get excited. And like Friday, they're going to have a deep dive into HomeKit that I'm really looking forward to. And to focus completely on software and introduce all of these new features and fixes, I think this is going to be great because we see people griping and complaining and shouting and begging that Apple will finally focus on getting things running stably. And then when it actually happens, it seems like a lot of people are going, but where's the hardware? And I'm okay that they didn't have it this time.
Well, thank goodness Mark Gurman warned us. Right? We knew that there wasn't going to be any hardware, and so there's no excuse to be upset, but by the lack of hardware. Although
let's not forget that they announced new hardware the past couple of WWDCs, and it didn't go really well.
Well, they announced the HomePod, right, and they didn't ship that for another 8 months. They announced the iMac Pro, which came out fairly quickly after that.
Yep.
Last year. They did announce a lot of software for the HomePod, like AirPlay 2, iCloud Messages, that didn't come out until last week. So
oh my.
They managed to get it in before the next WWDC, but that was really down to the wire. My favorite thing, though, I have to say, I really enjoyed, and I think it was Stephen Fry narrating it, the video they showed at the... Can I just show a little of the developer? They call this the developer migration.
Northern California's Bay Area.
Actually, I want to pause this for a second. What the hell aspect ratio is that?
That's definitely like Cinerama or VistaVision.
That was one thing. Apple's great because, Samsung with their keynotes will do very splashy things like have a screen on the stage as well as behind them. But Apple did something that they didn't really highlight in any way, and yet it was amazing, which was the screen stretched the entire width of the stage at the McHenry Convention Center. That is really wide. And this is not... Do you think this is a standard aspect ratio, or is it something Apple invented?
I think this is Apple being able to build in the Steve Jobs Theater any screen
like
of any resolution.
52:9.
Yeah, like when they have an 8K screen up there, they can basically, if they want a banana-shaped screen that goes from left to right, they can do that.
Let me start it. Continue it on. But this is a view of the Highway 280 heading down to Cupertino from San Francisco. It's a beautiful shot. You have my audio?
Every year, a great migration is made by one of the world's most mysterious species. To reach this utopian destination, these unique mammals will instinctively embark on a nomadic journey from all corners of the world.
To me, this was literally the highlight.
This is the developer's Triceratops, or as it is more commonly known,
stand by
the
for
developer.
Jim Dalrymple appearance here.
11.5 months of hibernation has taken its toll. And the sun is harsh as these nocturnal cave-dwelling creatures must greet daylight. For most, this momentous migration is their first,
Here comes the
while
beard.
for a select few, the pilgrimage is a
beard is
time-honored tradition.
Now, I got to ask Jim, did they film? They must have filmed this
I'm curious.
well ahead
that's
of
it.
the event.
That looks like a previous WWDC jacket, doesn't it?
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
So that's probably stock footage.
Or they called Jim, and he lives in the area, and said, "Hey,
he
Jim,
certainly has last year's jacket." So
yeah, is it? I mean, they're all wearing the old jackets. I mean, that's part of it. Is the old pins, the old jackets.
I think it was back at like 108, Leo.
Thanks. You actually know the time code?
No. You scoot. I saw you scoot up.
I did. I scooted up. I scooted a great distance.
he does operate the Jim Dalrymple fan page.
Do you really?
No.
Is that so? It's not just an old WWDC jacket. He's got the old Mac
Mac OS
icon underneath.
Back when we proudly capitalized the M in macOS.
Anyway,
Back in the good old days.
If you haven't seen it, go back and watch our coverage of the keynote from yesterday or Apple's video. They actually posted this on YouTube as well as it's called the developer migration. And man, it's just a great takeoff on David Attenborough and the BBC Planet and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was from the BBC Planet Earth documentary.
That's how it felt. It felt like
Yeah.
And that was Fry doing his best David Attenborough.
I don't think so. It didn't sound like him.
You don't think that's
I don't know.
Stephen Fry? Wait a minute. You don't think that's Stephen Fry? Or you don't think it's a good David Attenborough?
If you hire Stephen Fry, you're hiring to get the Stephen Fry voice, not the David Attenborough voice.
Listen. Let me see. Wait a minute. Now I'm curious.
Originating in the remote garages of Silicon Valley, developers
maybe not.
evolved at an unprecedented speed. To understand how, we must observe them here.
All Brits sound the same. Serenity it mistakenly tweeted that it was Anthony Hopkins. She said, "That's what I get for listening to the people behind me."
Well, remember when I said I've been getting
As
some
developers
voiceover
congregate
opportunities?
Yeah.
It's actually me that's
It's
doing
Micah
that.
Sargent.
Yeah.
Yay.
I won't do the impression here because I'm under
It's not
certain
Fry.
NDAs.
Okay, all right. Everybody
comes
agrees
up.
it's not Fry. All right.
When a casting agent said, "Get me a cheaper Stephen Fry," the first name that's incident for "Get me Micah Sargent."
So I have to say the thing that most encouraged me was that Apple the Finder has been neglected for years in macOS. I mean, truly neglected. They finally kind of cleaned it up a few versions ago, but there haven't really been any improvements to Finder. This, for the first time ever, they're really showing the Finder some love in macOS, and I found that encouraging because it's anything, frankly, any effort put into the Mac makes me happy. I was very impressed. Let's take a look at Mojave. That's what the code name will be for the next Mac OS.
And should be bothered that they're named after the arid desert where no new life will ever spring from again.
The dunes are pretty.
To die
Yeah.
and to regret ever having entered this realm, forsaken
Try
by
not to
God
read
and
those.
man.
Those dunes are pretty. One of the things this dunes show is that somehow, I'm not sure if this is a live desktop or something, that you can have the Mac change through the day.
Yes.
Which is kind of
Also,
interesting.
just dark mode is. I was surprised by how much people love dark mode and how excited I am about getting dark mode.
Yeah, it's one of those.
The Notes app though.
Wait, we'll get there. Hold on. One of the things that seems very, trivial, and yet you're right. But part of it is every other operating system I've ever used, you can customize the look of the operating system. You can change the colors. You can make it dark if you want. Apple's the only company ever that's really locked it down. The menu font's the menu font. You have a switch you could turn transparency on or off in the menu bar. That's it. So it is a big deal that they finally have themed the desktop, and you can have light or you can have dark. But dark for photographers is actually a great look. But you don't like the notepad?
The Notes app, it has a dark texture in the background. So you know how the Notes app is textured in macOS right now with that weird sort of trying to look like paper texture. Mm-hmm. Well, the dark version, I think it was Stephen Hackett on Twitter who said it looks like old oatmeal. And it really does look like this very dark oatmeal that you're typing your notes on.
You can never unsee it.
Ugh, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I just wish they'd get rid of that texture because I like dark mode and I've been playing around with it a little bit and it's looks good for most of the apps, but with Notes, I'm like, can you just not have the texture? I don't understand.
So you've installed, or did you have the beta on before?
No, I installed it on an external SSD.
Is it a public beta, or you have to be a developer to get it?
Yeah, you have to have a developer account and everything to use it. So yeah,
how stable is it? Feel pretty stable?
I didn't really do anything other than get it started. I will say, and I know we're not there yet, but whenever we do get there, like the people have been talking up the stability of these different betas in comparison with beta ones in the past. So that's been interesting to see.
I might consider installing it. I do like to. So one of the things dark mode will appeal to is photographers and video editors. I mean, that's really what you want. And of course, apps, including Final Cut, have had dark mode forever. But I like it on the desktop too, especially with the new dark iMac Pro. I think that's going to look pretty sweet.
I think anytime I get the chance to turn on dark mode in something, I use the official Twitter app. I've used it for years.
Yeah, I always go dark. Yeah.
And dark mode and everything, because the strain of those bright pages on my eyes is not fun. But with dark mode, it sort of cuts that back. And so that's nice that like now if I launch Adobe apps in macOS, they look the same as Final Cut, that looks the same as Notes, that looks the same as Xcode, etc. Having that all go dark is really nice. And Apple, they didn't make it. I covered the State of the Union, and they were talking about developers, adding dark mode to their apps. It's not something that's automatically turned on. You do have to go in and make some adjustments. But if you're following best practices as a developer who makes a macOS app, it is very simple. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's quite simple to make the changes. You just add dark variants for your different assets, and you go in and you specify dark colors. And so depending on how much custom stuff you've done in your app and how much you're following best practices, that could be as little as a day of updates to make your app compatible for dark mode.
Yeah, it's theming.
Yes, exactly.
You just theme the components.
Look, you get a whole 1 or 0 choice.
Yeah, that's
so at least it's one.
That's the joke I made. Is how hard is this feature to add? you just flip a bit and suddenly everything's dark. No, I think it's a little more complicated. It's really like it's theming.
So yeah, if you've got custom assets, like the example that they used was the sort of planetary app, and the Earth in the lighter mode was a lot brighter, but for the dark mode, they wanted to do an Earth that sort of looked like the sun was on the other side of the globe, essentially. And so they made, a darker asset for that, and some of the other components did. And they showed how a lot of your light assets and your light UI elements don't really blend and look good in that darker mode, and sometimes the typefaces can be the color of the type can really throw things off. So yeah, it's theming, and once you get it there, then it's very easy. And like I said, they've made it simple for developers to switch between the modes whenever you're debugging, and so it's quite simple to see how that works along with accessibility modes like high contrast.
Well, the developers, they've been living in a cave for the last 12 months.
Without their dark mode for so long. How did they do it?
It's funny, when we updated the Twit website, we don't have a white page, but we have a very light page. And a lot of people complained. They said, it hurts my eyes. It's like, come on, dude, turn your monitor down, okay? So the biggest, I think the thing that's really exciting to me is that they have essentially built into the preview a much more functional, interface that lets you do all sorts of interesting things. And I feel like this is, in a way, this is what a number of companies have been talking about for several decades, the idea of a document-centric operating system. Instead of how it is really on Windows and Mac, and has always been and never changed, is you have a file system that hierarchically organizes documents, and you have separately installed applications. And if you want to work on something, you have to open an application and then open the document, or double-click the document, which opens the application and opens the document, and then you can work on it. And it's a very modal, it's a very, actually really not an Apple-y way of doing things. And I know that Alan Kay, when he first, conceived of the Dynabook, and even, back to the Xerox PARC, there was always this notion of, how can we make it more document-centric, where you don't have to open something to modify something? And I'm thrilled to see that, that Apple's put money into the Finder, and the Finder team's working on it, and they're actually starting to get there in a very sensible way. So it says, with macOS Mojave, the Finder becomes even more of a doer. That's a good way to describe it. It's not just for finding files anymore, right?
Yeah, they've added a lot of meat there. It's sort of like a super version of Quick Look. And but now it's more like a first level equality view with all the other views you've got in the Finder, adding a sidebar for related information. And of course, they were mostly talking about media during the keynote. So
when you're talking metadata, it's more like the stuff that you'd see in Photos or Lightroom.
Exactly, like EXIF data. What really got me was the idea of having quick actions. So now that when you have like a Word doc you're not only getting information about the dock, you're not only getting a preview of it, but you could also get like this little row of context-aware icons of things you can do with it. And the idea that these are actions that you can actually create with Automator. So, for instance,
that's awesome. That's real vindication for Sal, who was let go a couple of years ago.
Too bad. They should have someone on staff to that knows stuff like that, because it's but just think about all the it's again the thing that I miss about stagnation about the Mac versus all the adulation that Apple pays towards iOS is that one of the barriers, one of the things that defines macOS versus iOS is, or should be for me, the ability to customize, the ability to make this Mac my own. And one of the tasks I'm always doing is there's no automatic organization of files that really works for me, because I tend to download things into a folder, or I tend to save something where I think it will logically go. And then once every couple of weeks or so, I have to go through this folder and figure out where things have to go. But it would be very, very easy for me to just create Automator actions. So I could just, again, use this preview, and then just click a button. Okay, that one needs to go to my server, then delete the original. That one actually keep in documents. That one move into the documents folder, but also back it up to Dropbox. All these things, so I can just for my specific tasks. And so when people start, it might encourage, I hope, people to create third-party actions that will basically take things that are too many steps, but don't have to be too many steps, and making them just like part of your own experience.
I am so pumped about this. Again, during the State of the Union, they went a little bit more in depth on this, and the little my little nerd heart leapt whenever they talked about being able to create custom quick actions using AppleScript and using Automator, because I already was creating different Automator workflows for resizing images and cropping them and doing things like that. And so to have that built into Finder now, Leo, as you mentioned, like to give us all of these possibilities to act directly on files instead of having to sort of go to these other places and then be able to adjust those files. I'm so pumped for this. And in fact, that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to download the beta and start using it, was so I could start tinkering around with some workflow quick actions or some Automator.
I think what it would be really interesting if Apple, and this may be what's happening. At one point, Federighi said, people keep asking us if we're going to merge macOS and iOS, and the answer is, in this big keynote style drop in of the no, boom. And then immediately thereafter, they talk about Marzipan and how you're going to put iOS apps on the desktop. But we pay no attention to that. But what I would love to see, what I think this might be an indicator that they're heading towards this, is, all right, let's just acknowledge that the Macintosh is a niche product for professionals. Let's make it powerful. Let's acknowledge the pros use AppleScript and Automator, and they want to do that kind of thing. And let's say we don't have to make this easy to use. What if we didn't have the constraint this has to be for normal people? Let them use the iPad. Let's make this powerful. You don't like that idea?
Well, no, I just I think that I saw nothing in the keynote that made me optimistic that the Apple will still be supporting consumer level Macs after the next 2 years.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
It is. So that's why I don't think they're merging. I think that would indicate that Apple wants a device that combines the Mac and iOS. I think they.
I think it's disingenuous.
Everybody who's using a Mac.
I think Craig Federighi's being disingenuous by raising that question. Nobody's asking that question. The question everybody's asking is, are you going to make Macs at all? Nobody's asking, are you going to merge macOS and iOS? Nobody cares about that. Yeah. So they're answering the wrong question.
I mean, we're going to be talking about iOS later, but compare the really huge changes they made, really huge improvements that they made to iOS, and also the improvements that were either on the bingo card at the end of the keynote, or stuff that were at the talk afterward, or things that are going to be coming out a little bit later on this week, and compare that to all the little tweaks as usual they kind of added to the Mac. The stacks are nice. I love the preview.
So tell me about stacks, because we were talking about you talked about how your file organization isn't well supported by Finder.
Yeah,
stacks instead of, and you see everybody knows somebody who has just their entire desktop is covered with icons. Like that's all that's there, right?
Yeah, my most deeply nested folder is a folder on my desktop called Tidy Desktop. Because then when there are like a million screenshots on this thing,
you just drag it into that.
I will then like create it, rename it Tidy Desktop June 2018, and then drag it into that folder.
Lord.
And so they're nested and nested and nested. So Stacks is pretty cool because by the way, I found out that if you dive into the beta a little bit, now you can actually choose where screenshots go. They don't necessarily have to go to the desktop specify. Which is nice.
A feature Windows has had for 2 or 3 years, but okay, we'll go on.
But with Stacks now, when you put things on the desktop, the desktop will automatically organize them into like a pile of Word docs and a pile of JPEGs and a pile of Photoshop docs, and you can basically expand the stack and grab something out of it. You can scrub through it left and right. So, and even if whenever it's not even like a clean desktop sort of operation, just keeps things in the stacks automatically, and they look pretty cool. So we've been hearing about Stacks as one of those like background rumors, back of the drawer features that they've been working on or they've been planning on for years. And actually, I had completely forgotten about Stacks until it got mentioned in the keynote finally. So congratulations to everybody from 2004 through today who might have contributed code to the Stacks feature. It's nice to see that finally hit the light of day.
So you don't sound like you share my excitement that they're putting some love into the Finder. Like you don't feel like that's a bellwether for the Macintosh.
When it's like when if you're used to like your parents cooking you frozen pizza every single night, and suddenly they order pizza out, and you're excited because wow, we got delivery pizza, and it's still not like actual cooked food. But hey, at least we're getting better than a higher level of crap than usual. Again, it's nice that they've added some features to the Finder, but it still concerns me every time I see that. Oh, great, okay, great. They're demonstrating the new, because we're going to still call it Marzipan, but the new like cross-platform app building. So now we've got the News app, and now we've got the Home app. But again, these are iOS apps that, as far as I've been able to see, haven't really been improved or expanded beyond what they do on iOS. We're seeing things like system updates are no longer going to be handled through the App Store. They're going to be handled through system preferences, which actually makes more sense. But again, this is another case of let's make the Mac look a lot more like iOS. So I was actually thinking about that this morning, and I mean literally, I'm just like going through my list of after all my notes about my firsthand experiences and the videos and everything I've been reading. It's like I don't know whether Apple is trying to encourage iOS developers to become macOS developers as well, or whether they're trying to make Mac users, basically training them to become iOS users without them really knowing it, so that in 2 or 3 years' time, when they come out with the higher level of iOS device that can really replace everything that a Mac does, they feel as though they're just stepping off of one boat and onto a dock, as opposed to having to flail around in the water while they swim to this new destination. I'm just not satisfied that Apple still cares about Macs for consumers. I haven't seen anything
and you're to the degree that instead of paying attention to what they say but what they do, you're right. I mean they there's no love for the Mac at all. I mean, they haven't updated the hardware now in more than a year, in some cases 5 years. So, I mean, my Mac Pro is 5 years, superannuated. It's 5 years old. I'm using a 2015 MacBook Pro. I mean, I have the iMac Pro, but that's just one product. And by the way, as long as we're talking about that, I'll get back to macOS in a second. We were talking on Sunday about why Apple might not have done the new MacBooks. And Greg Farrell made an excellent point, which is that Intel's not producing these new Coffee Lake chips in sufficient quantity for Apple, that it really is an Intel problem. And I have to admit, Apple is really hampered. I understand why Apple's rattling the cages about let's do ARM on desktop, because Intel's just struggling. But Intel does have, and I was really crossing my fingers. My dream would be a new MacBook Pro with the new Intel i9 hex-core, 6-core processor with Optane memory, Optane SSDs, something with a decent keyboard and maybe even some ports. That would be an amazing product that I would get excited about. Other companies are doing that. Dell's going to do that. HP is doing it. who else announced today? Oh, Asus announced Optane-based and iNAND-based laptops. But in every case, I think it's because they only, and Greg said, well, they only need 20,000. They don't need millions, and Apple needs millions. So that kind of makes sense to me. Maybe that's what Apple's waiting for, is quantity production of these i9 chips. That would make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But
still, as I've said before, they've shown the power to completely change everything they do if it's a goal that they think is worthy.
Yeah.
I don't think that this represents an insurmountable hurdle for them. Again, I don't think it's a smoking gun, but I think that if they had CPU problems with iOS devices, we would never hear about it. It would have been solved so damn quickly.
Yeah, there's too much money in iOS not to. Yeah.
So I'm not. And again, they're still selling a lot of Macs, particularly because they're the only manufacturer of them. It's one of the only desktop and notebook series that's actually showing like improvement. Again, because it's really a single source problem. But like I said, I would like to see more signs. There's just nothing in even Mojave that makes me think this is an advanced operating system built by people who grew up with like touch bars and touchpads and touch screens, people who are willing to take the desktop into the next level, as opposed to people who wish that their Mac were more iOS like.
Yeah. All right, you've broken my heart, Andy, but okay, we'll move on.
Then my job is done. Break time is over.
Leo,
now get back to work.
I'm over here still being excited about it with you.
I can't wait. Know, and by the way, if you want to get involved in the beta, thank you, Scooter X. The public beta for all of the new OSs will be out later this month. And so you can go to beta.apple.com and enroll. And so there you go. So enroll your Mac, and you will get it the minute it's allowed. Although they do say back it up first. Actually, it looks like I can get into the public beta now. Download the macOS public beta access utility. Should I install it on this Surface Studio?
Yeah, do that.
Damn,
and
I wish I could.
Let us know how that goes.
God, I wish I could. I have actually actively considered Hackintoshing a laptop just to get it macOS on some better hardware.
Yeah, that's just it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out well. So I had a Hackintosh notebook for a while. And it was very, very nice. This was before the iPad, and it was actually like a tiny little HP WinBook, and it was cool, but it was more of a proof of concept than anything else. But there's one thing that I'm still kind of following, that the announcement that they're going to need there's going to be this new thing called notarized apps. They're adding an enhancement to Gatekeeper. So that right now you get to choose, as a Mac user, you get to choose the level of security and where you trust to get your apps from. You can say no, just only let me install stuff from the App Store, or you can say only let me install App Store stuff, or apps that are from a third party, not from the App Store, but they've been signed by a known developer. And if you want to just say I just got this thing off of GitHub or somewhere, yes, you can. I will warn you about it, and I will try to stop you from doing that. But if you want to do it, we will let you do it. Now they have this thing called notarized apps, where I don't understand it completely. There's going to be a session at WWDC later on today about it that I hope I see the stream, because so Apple is not going to Apple's plan, as I understand it, is to have this new level where it's still like an unsigned, unauthored app, but Apple has done some sort of automatic screening on it and quote notarized it, not for content, but just to make sure there's no known malware in it, and that in future, and they seem to have said that in future editions of macOS, the macOS will not even be able to run non-notarized apps. So unless at some point Apple has touched this code. And I'm saying that it does sound like a drastic step, so I might have gotten it wrong. This is just me like talking to people who are there, who have talked to other people, and reading other announcements.
But this is what I was so afraid of when they announced the App Store, is that at some point they would close the door on web downloads. And I understand from a security point of view that's a good thing, but it's not a good thing from a developer point of view. From my point of view, I want to write apps that I can run on my own desktop for crying out loud.
They brought this up during the State of the Union and went into more detail. So this notarized apps are an extension of the developer ID program. And so what you do is you basically, with your developer ID, you update it or you upload it, it gets notarized. And then when someone installs it, then it sort of checks against that notoriety. And the point of it right now is to block malware before it gets distributed, and sort of apps that get signed or apps that get bad code injected. Maybe there are certain like versions of them that are bad, but it's not all bad. Then this gives Apple the ability to do sort of finer grain revocation. But the problem is, and they were very clear, like this is not app review. This is just making sure that apps are analyzed for security purposes. Yeah. But here's the problem, Andy, you are correct. They said in the State of the Union that future versions of macOS will require all apps to be notarized before they can be installed. No. And I was so upset.
That's it. If they do that, I can't use the Mac anymore. Period.
I think it's a bad idea.
This is an example, and Apple, and it bugs the hell out of me. Apple will use a public good, a verifiable public good. Yes, it's more secure to justify something that is ultimately in their commercial interest. That's really frustrating to me.
Yeah, what I don't like is that it's just the principle of the thing that I've spent $2,000 for this notebook. I get to run whatever the hell I want on it. You don't get to tell me that. Don't worry, Andy. We know we're so much smarter than we know you'll do stupid things. We're here to make sure that you don't drown in that puddle, which is why we're going to make sure you wear water wings wherever.
Well,
and that's raining outside. We won't let you go outside.
That's the exact opposite of what I was hoping for, which is, all right, we're going to assume the Mac desktop is for people who know what they're doing. They're pros. They want more power. Let you nanny all you want on the iOS platform. Don't nanny me on the Mac OS.
No, exactly. I don't understand the problem that it solves. I always thought that one of the most elegant ways Apple has ever implemented any features, how they did Gatekeeper, where if you try to launch a piece of code that is not signed, not from the App Store, hasn't heard of it, it will block it. But then, if you go right into Gatekeeper, it will say, "Would you like we block your attempt to run this app? If you'd like, we will allow you to run this app now. You don't have to go into any. It's already surfaced for you. You click one button. It's basically, are you sure you want to do this? Because don't complain to me. Because you never know when you need an app that's like 3 or 4 years old. Like again, you get your old Olympus camera out of the closet that you haven't used for 4 years, but now you've got a use for it, and you need to apply a system update, but the system updater has not been has not been updated in 3 years. They certainly haven't bothered to get it notarized, and so as a result, you can't update your camera for this stupid, what I think is an unfounded and heavy-handed reason.
I agree. So
this
is good. I'm glad you were watching the State of the Union, because obviously there's stuff that they put there that they wanted to bear a little lower below the headlines there. That is surprising. I hope they backtrack on that.
Yeah, they sort of pass it off as like, we're starting this now so that all of you can go ahead and get your apps notarized, but eventually it's going to be required.
Well, and as long as we're talking about that, they made a big deal about how Panics, Transmit, and Rich Siegel's Bare Bones will be back in the App Store. What do you know about that, Andy? Did you ask Rich about that? Because he pulled out of the App Store because he couldn't do all the things he wanted to do in the App Store.
Yeah, it was... I don't think I'm revealing anything from any private conversation, because he did have a really wonderful blog post just to explain his thinking when he pulled out of the App Store, that there were just so many onerous burdens to he felt as though everyone at Bare Bones felt as though they had to do so much work on the app that didn't add any features. It was just for compatibility with the App Store that was distracting them from actual features and actual improvements they wanted to make, and also the traditional developer complaints about how you're cutting me off from my users. I can't really interact with my users directly because I have to. You're protecting the user from me being able to deal with them directly, but you're not. You're just protecting me from good customer service. So I don't know exactly what changed between now and then. I can speak broadly and say that every time I've spoken to a developer who has had a really intense problem with Apple, usually that isn't like some bureaucratic thing where they just got a rubber stamped thing and then no response afterward. There's always lots and lots of conversation that go on before, during, and after it. Things get escalated up and down the chain. So the fact that the fact that it was promoted on a slide meant that there were a lot of discussions about that. It also shows the amount of value that Apple places in saying, look, all the developers that think that we don't like you and we work against your interests, look, Rich Siegel and Barebones, they're back in the App Store. Look, Microsoft is putting its apps back in the App Store. Hey, look, Adobe Creative Cloud is coming back into the App Store. So there really was a lot of
Software's Transmit, which also, as I remember, I think Panic did also pull out of the App Store for the same reason. So I'm really curious what's going on.
I'm sure he'll have Rich will have a great blog post or a great explanation. He is not in the area. He is on another coast right now. So when I see him again, we'll have a long
Panic
conversation.
tweeted this: coming improvements to sandboxing finally let us offer all Transmit 5 features in the App Store app. It will be a subscription. Or you can buy Transmit 5 direct from us, which will be a one-time purchase. So
interesting.
So that is interesting. So there is a change to the App Store. This sandboxing it sounds like, before you had to get permission to do certain things, and the App Store apps wouldn't allow you to do some things that some apps need to do. Mm-hmm. And that's why these apps couldn't be in the App Store. So obviously there is a change to the App Store. Did they mention that at all in the State of the Union? Maybe it's a developer track.
Yeah, no, they talked mostly about the improvements to Gatekeeper. And what I think is going on here is because they have worked on the security of macOS and these improvements to Gatekeeper, then it makes it easier to offer these sort of deeper features to apps without having to be third party, essentially, like third party existing outside of the Mac App Store.
That's interesting. Okay. That would kind of make sense. Okay, we'll find out more. Don't know. Preview updated screenshots. You'll get a little bar that'll let you modify the screenshots. We're just looking at more Finder improvements. Plus, as you said, Andy, you could put screenshots where you want. I thought this was an interesting use of continuity.
Yeah, continuity camera.
Yeah,
I love that. That's the feature. That's a feature where now, like, if you're in a Mac app. And let's say that you're a stage where you need to take a video or take a picture. You're not limited to FaceTime. If your phone is nearby and the Mac and the phone can see each other, essentially the iPhone camera becomes an accessory to the Mac. Where, like, let's say that you're in iMovie, you decide, oh, that's right, I didn't get an establishing shot of my office before I started talking. You can just theoretically just add a clip. Pick up the iPhone, not even have to like launch the camera, save something to iCloud. It's literally you're shooting a video and it literally goes straight into iMovie at the place where you said you wanted this clip to go. And that is exactly the sort of next level stuff that I've been wanting to see on the Mac, even though it's an integration feature for the iPhone. I always thought that Apple has missed out on a huge trick by not exploiting the fact that so many Mac users also have iOS devices. I hope this nods towards a coming feature where I never thought that the touch bar was a good idea. It's still not a good idea. I like that now you can put an automator action inside the touch bar if you have a new MacBook. Okay, but it's still like it's such a silly way to implement that feature. But imagine if I have my iPad, I can just simply have it on an easel like next to the keyboard, and Photoshop or the Finder or anything else can project buttons and user interface onto that thing, so I can have like a scroll wheel, a virtual scroll wheel, or I can have like thumbnails over there. And let me just say that, be clear that it's not as though Apple has even hinted at these features, but the fact that now you can realize that maybe this user has a camera nearby that's much better than our crummy little little FaceTime camera. Indicates that maybe they're going to start to think about ways of that as well. I'll say that that's something that would really get me interested in staying with the Mac if suddenly they had that kind of a compatibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me drooling over here. My God, that sounds awesome.
Well,
I know it's not a real thing, but that would be very cool.
Continuity and handoff have lots more capabilities. I'd be interested to see what else they can do with this. But I love the idea of using your phone as a data capture device that can then immediately go. It connects your phone and your. That's what handoff's all about. It connects your phone and your desktop. But this is a nice way to implement that. I'm encouraged by that. And there's a few more weird things. It is odd they're putting iOS apps like news. Okay, I get stocks on the Mac.
Why did they give so much attention to stocks? It was very strange.
It's like here's what stocks has been an app that has been
no one wants. One of the big features of iOS 10 was that you could hide stocks.
I was about to say most of the press about the stocks app in the past several years are tips and tricks on how to hide it in a folder or how to get it off of the launcher. And okay, it's integrated with news. Okay, that's nice. And yes, it can get okay again.
Integrating with news doesn't bother me as much as saying, oh, and now our stock apps does so much more. We're going to put it on the Mac.
There's probably a huge group of people out there that had just loved this, and they were all probably together celebrating.
No, Micah, no. If you're so interested in the stock market, you have much better tools.
That's fair.
That give you information you need that the stock apps doesn't do, including news, which if you go to Yahoo Finance, Google Finance, any finance app, they all have news. That's like de facto. So this is just bizarre. It's as bizarre as the Measure app. Why spend even 1 minute on stage on that precious keynote time saying we have an app that will measure things?
I want to talk about that, but getting back to stocks for a second, sometimes you forget the fact that every person who works at Apple, their daily carry phone is
they want to know
iPhone.
how the Apple stock's doing.
Well, yeah, okay, that too, but. It's like sometimes we try to ascribe, what was the huge 5-year plan that requires them to update the stocks app? Sometimes it literally is that the people who build the operating system for iOS and build the apps are sick and tired of they use a stock tracking app and they're sick and tired of their own in-house app is terrible. So they might have just simply said, we want to build this for ourselves, and fine, we'll release it to everybody else. But it shames us that this is so terrible. That oftentimes a feature that hits the Mac or iOS is that simple. It's something that they wanted for themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
We have to talk about, because this was the thing that I wanted more than anything else. Every time it's come up on a podcast, somebody's asking me, what do you want to see from WWDC? And I got it. And it was both that Siri on the Mac can control HomeKit stuff now, and then the fact that they brought the Home app to Mac. I am thrilled. The Apple gods were listening to me and my prayers, apparently. It's finally here. The Home app is limited, as Andy talked about, in the case that, yes, it's an iOS app that exists on the Mac, but they haven't leveraged much of the Mac's capabilities with it. But I don't care. It's still there. I can control my HomeKit accessories from the Mac. I can use Siri to do that. I'm thrilled and pleased, and I made the necessary sacrifices that I had to make to the Apple gods to make that happen. So glad it all worked out.
So there was some question. Megan and I were talking about this. It kind of makes sense to have HomeKit on a mobile device, but and I likened it to the Sonos app, where the best way to control a Sonos is with the app as opposed to your voice, and it's on the phone and it's on your iPad. But every once in a while, I do want it on my desktop because I'm listening to music in my office. So that's where you come down on this, Micah. That it is nice to have. What are the advantages of having HomeKit on a desktop?
So one of the things that's super important to me is that I am a bit of a control freak, and Siri does an okay job of communicating and controlling my HomeKit stuff. But the way that it works right now is it's very limited. You have to say, turn this particular light this color, and then you go back in, you say, okay, I want to shut off the lights here, I want to be able to make exact adjustments in the exact way that I want to make them across multiple different devices, HomeKit accessories rather. And so what this allows me to do is from the HomeKit app on the Mac, I'm always adding new HomeKit-enabled accessories and shuffling them around to different rooms. And it's sort of pesky to have to use a finger and hold down and type on the screen to rename things and adjust them to different rooms. By bringing this to the Mac, I can use my keyboard and my trackpad or mouse to make these adjustments a lot quicker and a lot easier. And then the fact is, because I'm a writer who works from my home office, from my computer, a lot of the times I will be at my desk and just want to make those adjustments from there. So I think that this is more of a control freak kind of feature, but also for anybody who wants to, easily adjust and move around things and organize their HomeKit enabled accessories. By doing it on the Mac, I think it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah. That's what I figured, but I just didn't know anybody who did it.
Yeah, and not only that, there are even simple things like number one, Siri should be Siri everywhere, or else it's not Siri. You can't have Siri Junior on the Mac, or else you're just not going to trust.
But you have Siri Junior on the HomePod.
But that's different. HomePod is. If you bought it, if you already bought it, you really like the idea of having a cantaloupe, a cantaloupe that has a speaker and an Apple logo on it. So next year we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But also makes sense that if I'm at my Mac, I am dead center in front of a microphone, as opposed to maybe if I'm working on my Mac, maybe my phone is in the other room, maybe it's in the bedroom charging, or maybe it's in my pocket. And there's just no reason for it not to support everything that it can do on iOS.
Fair enough. So news, and it makes sense to put news on there. Although, to me, if you're at a desktop, you can use your browser perfectly well to get news.
Yeah.
All right. This is where it goes the other direction, where they're appifying stuff, which makes sense on iOS, but on the desktop, worries me a little bit.
The way they pitched it in the State of the Union was that these were some of the apps that they saw as being the simplest to try out this new thing. Basically, so macOS and
demo.
iOS
It's a marzipan demo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're testing it out. They're seeing how it works. And these apps were easy to sort of map mouse events to UI events.
Let's take a little break because I do want to talk about marzipan. I want to talk about privacy. A lot of what Apple said on the stage yesterday was really a subtle, hidden, a crypto dig at Facebook and Google. But we'll talk about that and a lot more. Andy Inako is here from our fabulous friend from Inako.com, Mikah Sargent from Mobile Nations, and of course iMore. He's a senior editor at Mobile Nations. Our show today brought to you by Rocket Mortgage. From Quicken Loans. Quicken Loans, #1 lender in the country, both in volume and in customer satisfaction. #1, 8 years in a row. #1, according to J.D. Power, for mortgage origination. #1, 4 years in a row for mortgage servicing. They are great. Their customers love them. But there was one thing missing. Rocket Mortgage recognized that the home loan experience was kind of stuck in the Dickens era. I mean, the idea of getting dressed up and going to a bank, please, sir, can I have some money? And then, filling out like, oh, yeah, here. Money? Here, fill this 20-page application out and get back to me. And then going to the attic and finding pay stubs from 4 years ago. I mean, this whole thing was antiquated. They said, we could do this better. We've got something called computing power. So they decided that they could put this all online. No more going to the bank. You just go to rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. And when you get there, it's a simple just a couple of questions that you can answer right off the top of your head. Then, because they have relationships with all the financial institutions, they get all the information they need as long as you say, go ahead. They crunch the numbers based on income, assets, and credit. They'll immediately, under 10 minutes, this takes just a few minutes, we'll analyze all the home loan options you qualify for and find the one that's right for you. You choose the term, the down payment, the rate. You apply simply. You will understand exactly what's going on, understand fully, and then mortgage confidently. So fast you could be at an open house and say, let's buy this house, honey. Go through the process. A few minutes later, show the realtor, we're approved. We'd like to make an offer. That is power. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. They're an equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states and MLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. You're only minutes away from a home loan or a refi. And by the way, people sometimes say, well, do they have good rates? Yes. Everybody I've talked to who's used Rocket Mortgage, and I know quite a few people now, say they had the best rates that were out there. rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. You owe it to yourself. Give it a try. We thank them so much for making MacBreak Weekly possible. So they've really beefed up Safari, not only in iOS, but it looks like you're going to have this in macOS as well, including something that no other browser does right now. And they asked Mark Zuckerberg about this when he testified before Congress. What about shadow profiles, Mr. Zuckerberg? And Mark said, what? I don't know what that is. Oh, really? Okay. Either Mark's not paying attention or he's lying. Shadow profiles, of course, the fact that you don't even have to have a Facebook account for Facebook to track you on the web. Those like buttons everywhere identify you uniquely and let Facebook know what you're visiting on the internet. Those will be blocked in Safari. Tracking prevention keeps social media like buttons, share buttons, or comment widgets from tracking you without permission. That's something Google's never going to do. Right?
Well, I agree. They'll be happy to shut down Facebook like buttons.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're already getting enough antitrust action from the EU as it is. But yeah, this is an area in which a classic example of what we're talking about earlier. That no, it's not like a flashy feature. Oh, here's something I can do that I've never been able to do before on a Mac or an iOS device. This is a whole suite of these little features. Like again, shutting down all these trackers automatically. Now, basically, if one of those like buttons is there, it doesn't make them disappear, but there'll be a little warning that says, like a caution saying, hey, this is a like button that can track you. Do you want the tracking to happen or not? But also they're doing things like often there's so many sneaky tricks that marketers and advertisers use, like profiling your system. And if they can't get your ID from one way, they'll figure out that, well, here are the plugins that this browser is running. Here is the configuration of the machine that's running it. So now Safari will also, when the website asks for details about the machine and the web browser that's running, it will give them a really stripped down and almost anonymous, like the least amount of information possible. They've also taken out in previous editions of macOS, you could sort of like inside preferences set that here's my Twitter account, here's my Twitter handle, here's my Facebook account, here's my Facebook Facebook password, so that sort of stuff will auto log in and like sharing features. Some of them that are powered by Apple software will work. Now, apparently in the beta, neither of those is there. Maybe it'll be restored later on, but apparently there's a really big and really emphatic lockdown on getting things not only encrypted and secured, but also protecting the user on the web, which is a really, really nice feature.
Yeah, yeah.
One like you said, that won't be thought too much about, but in the end, it makes a huge difference. And I'm glad that there are people there that are focusing on this. And I love that very clever. Okay, we will give you the very small amount of user identifier data that we have to give you, but it's going to look exactly like hundreds of thousands of other people's data that are user profiles as well. And I think that's pretty clever and a nice smug moment for me to go, ha ha, you have no idea who I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Apple is smart to double down on privacy. I'm not fully convinced that they keep everything as private as they'd like you to think. Tim Cook gave an interview on NPR saying, no, we never asked Facebook for additional information, although the New York Times said that they did. And
yeah, the latest, if you're talking about the latest mini scandal with Facebook, that they've been basically handing information to like phone.
Yeah. In interviews with the Times, Facebook identified other partners who got requested and got information, including Apple, Samsung, and Amazon. So this is okay, maybe it's a he said, Zuck said thing. Tim denies it, but Facebook says, no, Apple requested it and got it. Apple says, and then a spokesperson says something completely different from Tim. The company relied on private access to Facebook data for features that enabled users to post photos to the social network without opening the app. Interestingly, if you look at the new Mojave, and this may be something that only the beta has, there's no mention of linking to your Facebook or Twitter account in Mojave, as it has been in previous versions of macOS.
Yeah.
So there's a little disagreement. I don't think this is the problem I have with sometimes with Apple. I think that I don't think they're completely forthright in their interest. For instance, Again, another New York Times story. Paul Manafort got in trouble yesterday. The feds asked the judge to revoke bail because they said Manafort's been trying to influence witnesses in his indictment. How did the feds know this? Manafort was using encrypted messaging programs like WhatsApp and Signal. And we know from the feds' warrant that the way that they got the information and the actual text of these messages from a supposedly encrypted messaging apps was they have access to his iCloud stuff. It's in the warrant. So while Apple would like to pretend everything is hidden and encrypted, they're storing it.
How do they have access? How do they have access to his iCloud stuff, though? In the first place,
this is a perfect example. Micah, you ought to know better. Apple has never said they don't have full access to your iCloud.
No, I'm curious. I'm curious how the lawmaker or this body
they have a
got
warrant.
Access to.
They have a warrant.
Okay, that's what I was. I'm sorry, I missed that part.
And that's an important distinction. It's not like somebody can't just read it. You have to have a warrant, but Apple will, with duly, with the law enforcement subpoena or warrant, will hand it over. And so they have it, is the point. And I think people often feel like, oh, well, Apple, my data is safe because nobody has it. Well, iCloud has it.
Yeah, the point being that you're always responsible for the security of your own data, and that you're even if Apple is the most trustworthy company when it comes to privacy and security, and I believe that they are in terms of mass market consumer products, that doesn't mean that you can say, oh, I'm using an Apple product, good, I'm safe. It will also depend on that app behaving properly. It will also depend on there might be some data that is being handed over to Verizon, that's being handed over to that AT&T is collecting, that your internet service provider is collecting. Exactly. So that's why if you are doing something that would that might eventually lead to an indictment happening, perhaps this is when you want to meet someone face to face at a neutral location. On a road by the side of the desert, or again, learn how Tor browser, the Tor browser works, and actual and encryption works.
And I prefer self-destructing parchment and invisible ink myself.
Paul Manafort probably didn't read the disclaimer that said in the Apple backup that says back up your chat history and media iCloud. So if you lose your iPhone or switch to a new one, your chat history is safe. You can restore your chat history and media when you reinstall WhatsApp. Media and messages you back up are not protected by WhatsApp end-to-end encryption while on iCloud. He must have just missed that.
He probably didn't see that very small detail.
Missed that. But it's there. So you're right, Andy. I guess I think that a lot of people just think, oh, it's safe. It's encrypted. And
do you think they even think that much?
No,
I feel like they don't even go that far with it, honestly. Like, wait, encrypted? That's cool. Yeah. I didn't even know it did that.
Use Telegram as well, same thing. So just so you know. And, I doubt that Tim Cook's going down to the basement and looking at your iCloud data. But,
he'd see all my dogs. That'd be okay.
But if there's a breach, and there have been breaches of iCloud, remember that's how we know what Scarlett Johansson's butt looks like. No, actually, that's not how we know. But it's
lost in translation. The first
we know from other sources. But honestly, that's when those are all stored in iCloud. All those celebrity nudies, and so it's possible either through a hacker gaining access. A malign employee. You just need to understand that. So, I don't know why I'm bringing that up. I'm just saying that Apple may pay a lot of attention to this, but it still has all that stuff in the cloud. iOS 12. Let's move on. The big thing, I'm thrilled. First of all, it's going to be any iOS device that supports iOS 11 will support 12. They're not cutting off the bottom end. That's what did you say, Andy? 5S and up?
5S and up, pretty much.
And big speed improvements. Now, they didn't say, as you point out, that whether these will migrate to lower-end phones or not, but I would imagine a 70% faster swipe to camera, 50% faster keyboard display, twice as fast app launch under heavy workload. Those are big improvements.
Yeah, at a time when if you bought a Nexus phone from Google, but at the same time you bought like a 5S or even an iPhone 6, you can still run the latest version of the OS on the iPhone 6. You cannot run the latest version of, when it's released later this year, you will not be able to run the latest version of Android on that contemporary device. So that's really, really great stuff. It's also good. It's also, I think, partly an acknowledgement of the fact that Apple's solution for being able to sell iPhones in a market where people don't have $1,000 to spend on a phone is maintaining a very, very lively second and third hand iPhone market, and basically making sure that if someone were to blister pack an iPhone 5S, it will still be able to they'll still be able to sell that person music and sell that person apps. So it's very, very smart on all the way you go around with this.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I read the asterisks on this. I read the asterisks on this, and these measurements were on a 6S. So it is, does improve it considerably, even on a very slow phone. It actually may not be as much improvement on a faster phone. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Micah.
Oh, I was curious if that also means, we get more money from third-party device resellers like Gazelle and things like that, because these older devices now are, better working with the latest software. I'm just wondering if that has any effect on that.
I would imagine so. It means they can sell them for more, right?
Yeah,
there's
a
brisker market for older iPhones.
That's still I sometimes poke fun at Apple for again ignoring basically selling like high-end phones, but the fact of the matter is, getting back to if you bought a Nexus 6P or Nexus 5X, not only does it not get the latest software, but these were also phones that had like boot loop problems that were related to like unseating of chips on the device. They weren't as sturdily made as an iPhone 5S. Again, an iPhone 5S might have been my last daily carry iOS device, or not far from it. And I still have it. And if I were to fire it up, it will still like light up just fine. I'm sure it'll be perfectly good. And it's still like classic, lovely design. So you pay extra money for Apple devices, but the fact of the matter is that those darn things last a long time, and Apple supports them for a darn long time.
Are we excited about FaceTiming 32 people at once?
Oh God, no.
I don't have 32 friends, so
I don't either.
There you go. I think I have FaceTime turned off on most of my devices because my mom used to try to FaceTime me all the time. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to hold this phone up to my face like this for 3 hours while I'm talking to you. So I just have it turned off.
Micah, it's the only way I talk to my mother. She refuses to use anything else. Yeah. But I don't understand. I do it on the iPad or the computer, and then I could be doing other things and talking to her.
That's very nice. I should probably be more graceful or grateful or kind, but I don't. Somebody made the joke, and I thought this was kind of funny, the way that you can, and I know we're going to talk about it soon, but the way that you can use Memoji in FaceTime. Someone was like, that means I don't have to clean up my entire apartment and comb my hair and do this and that
Actually,
in order to have a FaceTime conversation.
No, because the way they demonstrated it, the Memoji's on your head, but it's your body.
Oh, that's true.
And
so
your room.
You still need to clean your room.
You don't have to brush your hair or do your makeup. That's all.
There you go.
So you're all excited. Let's talk about Memoji. So this is Animojis. This is iPhone 10 only. They didn't say that. And I realized during iOS today, the reason they didn't say that is because this is coming out with the next generation of iPhones. So what it really is, iOS 12, the new iPhones, and the iPhone 10. It needs that special camera array in the notch. But it's going to do the same thing Animojis do with the ghost and the tiger and the koala. Those are all the new ones, and a dinosaur or the old poop emoji, except that instead of poop, it'll be your face.
Which, depending on whether you cleaned up for that day. No, I'm just kidding. I am really excited about these.
Of course you are, Micah. I'm so glad I found somebody who is.
I'm a big user. Well, if Renee was here, he would say the same. He and I are both big users of Bitmoji, which are the little characters that you can create. Snapchat bought the company, and you create these little characters that look like you or don't look like you, depending on what you want, and you can send them around, but they're more static. Snapchat added a few that move around, but not according to your face.
Yes, but I should point out that Samsung does this with the S9. True. The thing the mistake Samsung made is they take a picture of you and then automatically do it. And it's uncanny valley as hell. It's really
you look like one of those like 4-year-old pageant kids. Have you ever seen like their photos, like their people, their company, their individuals will like Photoshop like pageant photos, and it's just like, let's erase everything and make the eyes. Yeah, it's creepy. It's no
It's
good.
creepy. And I think
You're
Apple
not-
was wise to avoid Uncanny Valley by making these. They're not based on pictures like the Bitmoji and the S9.
You have to build them.
And they're much more cartoony, right?
Yeah, they're styled after the Animoji themselves. And I think one thing that I want to note with this, that Bitmoji has failed on, that I think the Samsung thing has failed on in a way, that Google with the version of their Animoji too, they don't have a whole lot of customization options. And so by the time you get to like your finished design, it doesn't really look like you. And I think that, or I've at least seen people talking about how much you can customize with these, and I'm really happy about that. And particularly with people of color, Bitmoji and others have really failed to capture some of the hairstyles and textures of people of color in the past. And Apple clearly took the time to, I think, get some of this right. So all of this is to say, like, yes, it's a super, super silly thing. I just think it's fun, and I'm glad that Apple was, before they released this feature, it seems that they paid some level of attention to inclusivity on getting, as many people's possible looks as possible.
Here's Marquez Brownlee, speaking of people of color, with his Memoji. And yeah, it looks great. And while it doesn't look exactly like him,
The hair isn't. Yeah, that his hairstyle is not unpopular.
They should
I'm sure
probably
they'll
offer that.
they'll
Yeah,
add
that
and
one needs to
expand
be
it a
in
little
there.
Yeah. Yet,
Yeah.
I mean, also it's not creepy. Which
Yeah, but and the other thing is that, like, it's nice to. I think the way to do this feature is exactly the way that Apple decided to do it. People want to control the way that this thing looks. They don't want. Yes, it's a really cool tech demo of just look into the 3D camera. It will build an automatic like 3D emoji of you. It's like, no, I want to be able to choose. No, if you got my skin tone wrong, I want to fix that. If you got the shape of my face exactly right, but I'm very, very self-conscious about like the size of my nose or the size of my ears, I want to be able. I don't care if it is like a lie. I want my ears to be a little bit smaller, or I want to change my hairline forward or back. And I'm certainly not going to make fun of this feature. It's a fun feature. And it's because a phone is such a personal device, it should be fun. Okay,
this is the Samsung that I took a picture of me, and it got my like 5 o'clock shadow. The teeth aren't quite right. I look like Bill Clinton.
I was going to say, I thought that was Bill Clinton.
I did not have sex with that woman. I didn't. Oh, vote for me. Vote for me.
Anderson Cooper. Yep.
All us gray hairs look the same. So this is a little Uncanny Valley. I mean, it's similarly fun, but
it's a weird shading.
But it's
yeah.
And it's super fun that the emoji can actually be tracking your features and tracking your face, and you can actually do something that's kind of live. I thought that was probably the most fun demo of the entire thing as she was building it, but also. I was really impressed with the fact that it wasn't like, here's a static emoji and now here is you like. It's like as she's talking about what she's doing, the emoji in process goes from this like shaved Barbie head that's like been like bleached of all that hasn't been painted yet to something that as she's talking now it's talking as you're doing. It really is like a scene out of Westworld, only without the nudity or violence. It was very very cool.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, actually, I was very impressed by a number of the presenters. Let me turn off the sound here, but I was going to see if I could find her.
Also, I don't think we've seen another Apple keynote that had so much representation of both genders.
Yeah, a lot of women on stage. And the women demonstrated real skills in bicycling, creating animojis while they're working. I mean, this poor woman was breathless as she's chatting with Jay Blahnik. She was just kind of out of breath as she was bicycling. I was very impressed by. The women on stage did a good job.
Exactly. Being able to like not only talk, but also talk to a very, very tightly controlled script while exerting yourself. I am not the person to call for that.
Here's crud.
Good for her.
I'll never be able to use Windows. Okay, here's the example of the Barbie. She's using. Where's my audio? Are you not hearing it?
Of new effects.
Currently.
There we go.
So I could add things like shapes or text.
So in real
Let's check out
time,
these
she's going to
filters.
make a.
Ooh. So this is comic book. It's really fun. But for a response about a tiny dog hat,
I want to see her
I think I'm going to go in a different artistic direction.
As much like.
Do you think she got she went to the beauty parlor and said, "Can you duplicate this?"
Oh my goodness! Now people will do that. They hold up their Memoji. I want to look like
I have to move a little farther along. I think for the.
I think it was before this because I think this is where she already has it, and she's going to replace her face with it.
All right. Let me. Yeah, you're right. Here we go. So, she's got her. Did you lose my audio again?
Yes.
I swear to God, I just.
Roll.
I don't know how Windows works.
Excited.
There we go.
There it is.
Is that you, Karsten, or me?
They can't all be cute and cuddly, though.
Okay, it's
so
Karsten.
here's our T-Rex.
You're making me think I can't use a machine.
And we have our very own.
This is the new ghost
friendly
emoji.
Little
Oh,
ghost.
now with tongue detection. I loved how they made a big deal of that.
Not only, well, that's actually kind of
So
interesting.
much
It
fun.
shows how refined the thing's getting. It also does wink detecting. You don't. It doesn't just blink. You can also wink, and it will reflect.
And your
it properly.
eyes move as well with the gaze detection.
Here's the bald Kelsey.
So I selected a skin color.
It's still following her. What's cool is she's doing this live, and it's following her mouth, which is really neat.
I thought that
Scales
was
up
good
and
as well.
down as she moves her head from side to
These are
side.
just
Yeah.
right. Okay, on to the main event. There are so many hairstyles to choose from. First, I'm going to grab my color.
Unless you're Marquez
And then,
Brownlee.
like I said, I need to go a little bit shorter. All right.
Now, can you use these in a
Nope,
Tinder
this is the
profile?
one.
Because that might actually get me some
Now
help.
that I'm all set, I can, of course,
A lot of
select
people
my
have
eye color.
replaced their
What's
Twitter
really
avatars
amazing
with them
is as
already,
I'm
I've
making
seen.
changes,
Oh, really?
the character
Yeah.
I might have to get
At
the
least
beta so I
5
can keep
people
up
I've
with
seen.
the kids.
I haven't. Yeah, I have not installed it on my iPhone 10 yet, so I haven't actually made it as much as I said I was excited about it.
is a great pair of sunnies.
During the State of the Union, they said that the reason this was sort of a joke, but also I could see it. One of the reasons they added tongue detection was because when people were trying out the feature, one of the first things they did was stick out
The
their tongue, and it didn't work.
disappointment that they didn't. Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
But it does show off how sophisticated this stuff is getting. I was thinking about how this could help accessibility to give like descriptive text of here is the you're talking. You're talking to somebody, so if you're vision impaired,
Here's what their
that's okay.
face looks
But
like
if
right now.
they're smiling right now.
Yeah.
They're winking right now.
That's
they're-
cool.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a great idea. Yeah.
Emoji right here into the drawer alongside the rest of my team.
And it's still talking even
And
down
that's
there in
how
the
simple
drawer.
it is to create
That's very
your
cool.
very own
It's pretty
emoji.
amazing.
That's when you're playing this game at expert level.
Yeah.
It's not necessary to have it live and have it to shrink down and be elsewhere when the interface for the selections are different. But it's like, you know what? We're playing at expert level. We're hitting from the back tees. We're going to do the best.
Always been impressive with the demos.
They earned that $1,000. I'll tell you. They also expanded it from if you're doing emojis from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. So now you can record more than one line when you're doing your lip sync video.
Hi, here I am. I just wanted to say, how are you doing? It's like, no, I need more time.
I enjoyed
Get lucky.
the video that your colleague Renee Ritchie posted on Instagram of him playing augmented reality.
Yes.
What was it? Slingshot, right? With iJustine.
I can't remember what Apple calls it, but yeah, it's essentially these blocks are all set up and you slingshot around, and it's so funny. This is a little bit dystopian in a way, watching these two people play on a blank table.
But showing off that ARKit is now multiplayer, so you can have people. You can have not only multiple people playing this game, but multiple people watching the players play the game. They also added something that I'm kind of concerned and excited to see how developers deal with implement this. But you can actually basically place a 3D object somewhere like geographically. So basically you can like do a geocache where you're hiding an Oscar statuette at the base of a statue, and it will just always be there. So anybody who just comes along, they will find it there, whether there's like one person with this app or 500 people with this app. So
I love that.
That's kind of cool.
Another example that they gave was a pin board in like your home, so that you and your family can post photos to it, and so he would be able to come back to that spot every time and hold up your iPhone or your iPad and add photos to it, or add different documents and things.
Okay, I'm willing to draw the line right there. You're inside your own damn home. You can actually
get a real pin board.
Write something on a piece of paper, get a magnet that's shaped like Yosemite, and put it on the damn fridge. That's what that's why the fridge is still made out of metal.
Let me see if I can find, because they did a pretty good demo of the game. I wasn't that impressed with the Lego stuff. That seemed to me like it was taking away some of the capabilities that a kid would expect with Lego. It was a nice demo.
It's interesting, like, to build the Lego version of Cinderella's of like the Millennium Falcon, but when you're finished with this tactile real world thing, you now see that there are TIE fighters Lego TIE fighters flying around.
Andy, it didn't look like that was actually what you could do. I think you have to buy the Playhouse.
Right, exactly. No, that's
sort of the Anker.
It's the idea that once you've built this model, once you've actually built this.
No. I'm saying you don't get to build it. You have to buy it.
Oh, you think it came pre-built, the main thing?
Oh, for sure, it came pre-built.
I don't question that. Like, if you have I'm sure it's not. I'd be very, very impressed if you just build a random shaped house out of whatever. But that would be cool. Again, of course, I'm focused on Star Wars, but it would be.
They
cool
might have a Millennium Falcon kit.
Because, well, again, an enhancement to it where now there's not only is it like this, hey, look, this cool like little animated diorama, but no, now you can see like Imperial walkers. That let's say now your little playtime scenario is that the reason why the Millennium Falcon is like parked here is because once again the warp drive and the impulse drive are both shot. You can see on the top of it, like Chewie and Han Solo are both trying to fix it. Your job is to, like, you've got the perspective point of view of someone in a Rebel A-wing trying to shoot at the Imperial walkers that are steadily coming towards it across your living room carpet. Yes, I would buy an iPhone 10, the Millennium Falcon Lego kit, and a living room carpet big enough without any.
But understand, I don't think you'd be able to modify the Lego kit. You'd have to be glued together because you can't build it because you have to have it look like that so that they can do it. I don't think it's smart enough to do it on the fly, is what I'm saying.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things that defines the difference between anybody below the age of 35 and above the age of 35. I remember the days where you just got like the big paint bucket full of Legos and you built yourself a damn Millennium Falcon. You didn't have a book of instructions that say, oh, wait, stop. You're building the Millennium Falcon wrong. All right, well, it's my Millennium Falcon, damn it. And if it's mostly white bricks with yellow and red bricks in the middle and it's not right the shape, well, it's...
And that's what I mean when I'm feeling like, it's a cool demo. They showed a castle. It's very much like Microsoft did with their Minecraft demo.
Yeah.
There it is.
Thank you for finding multiplayer Minecraft.
Yeah,
that'd be so fun.
So, but my sense was you buy this prefabbed town. You can't modify it because it would screw it up, and then you can stick figures in it. And to me, that's not as kid friendly. Yeah. It's a nice demo, but it's not as kid friendly.
So long as we agree that it's not that you build this thing that comes in a big box and it's already built for you. I think it's an add-on like play feature because once you've built you got the Cinderella's castle or you got the Millennium Falcon or you got the whatever kit and you've spent like 2 days like building it up and then now it's just this static object that's just goes on a shelf or that your big sister is mad at you, so she smashes it and then hides half the pieces so you can't put it back together again. The fact that now this can be like the center of an identifiable piece of a virtual playset, I think that's a cool. I can't wait to see
added
what
value
developers decide
for sure.
to do this. I think this is super, super interesting.
Let's take a little break. We're going to talk about watchOS and tvOS. We got a lot. This was a 2-hour, 45-minute keynote. We got a lot to. Was it that long? 2.5 hours.
2:20, a quarter, I think.
Yeah, 2.25. Long keynote. We'll talk about watching tvOS in just a second. Our show today brought to you by 23andMe for Father's Day. I did 23andMe when they first started, which was some years ago. And one of the things I love about it, it's a DNA kit. You spit into a little vial, send it back to them, and they come back. I should open my account here. And they come back with about 75 reports all about you. And let's stipulate the most fascinating book in the world is the book all about you. So it's all about your genetics, both in ancestry and health, what it tells you about you and where your people came from, and what wellness traits you have, weird traits too, like are you prone to back hair, strange stuff like that too. I have an invite to share in DNA Relatives. Let me show this. So my mom, I love it. And it was really fun because I got a lot of information out of it. And then over the years, as they learned more about genetic markers, they added more reports. So there's always more coming to you all the time. And then I gave it to my sister, my mom, for Christmas. And you see, my mom wants to share her DNA information with me. So now we can share and combine it. And Dad hasn't done it yet. So here's the good news. They've got a great deal, 30% off now through June 17th. 30% off every kit. It includes free gift wrap. If you haven't done it, get it for yourself, get it for Dad, and get 30% off both. Go to 23andme.com/twit. 23andme.com/twit. So I'm going to accept. By the way, look at this. We predict Mary Laporte is your mother. Look at that. Good news. You share 49.9% of my DNA was shared with my mom. So as you fill in this tree, you can see more and more and more. It's really, really cool. We're going to have to put our ancestor locations in here. So we haven't done that yet. I'll show you the ancestry report, which is really, really neat. I can see that I'm 39.1% British and Irish, but I've got a little Neanderthal in there. 265 Neanderthal variants. That means 4% of my DNA is Neanderthal. That's a good example of stuff that they've learned. When I first did it, they didn't even know that Homo sapiens could interbreed with Neanderthals. That was considered by scientists probably unlikely. Then they found some genetic material from Neanderthal genetic material a few years ago, and they found out, you know what? They did interbreed, and now I can find out how much of me. There are many people who have more Neanderthal in my family. My sister has less. She's been lording it over me ever since. 23andme.com/twit. I found out another thing the other day. You can download your entire DNA stuff, your whole thing, and upload it. There are sites that you can upload it to, the raw data, that's the word I was looking for, that you can upload it to and will give you additional analysis. This is so cool. I can see what my markers are. By the way, wouldn't this be great to get for a kid who's studying genetics, to give them some real world stuff to work on and understand? 23andme.com/twit right now through Father's Day, 30% off every kit through June 17th, which means you can take advantage of this too. It's actually better when you do it with your family. I have everybody except Dad. So I hope he's not watching. He now knows what his gift will be. 23andme.com/twit.
Hey, before we go on to watchOS and Apple TV, do you want to just talk about a little bit Siri shortcuts?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry I left that out because I think that's maybe one of the most. So this was my supposition. Apple bought Workflow, which was a great third-party app on iOS about a year ago. Workflow was like Automator for iOS, but it's very limited because it's iOS and third-party apps don't get access to things like the Wi-Fi signal or whatever. Apple bought it, and I was been waiting for them to kind of incorporate it. My guess is these Siri workflows are really workflow, right?
It looks just like it. I mean, the app looks just like it, and many of the features are similar. And in fact, right now you can create, because in the beta there is no shortcuts app just yet, but you can create workflows in Workflow and then use them sort of like you could whenever the shortcuts app exists.
Perfect. So it's going to be even better because Apple, of course, has access to all the sensors, all the information, all the stuff that third parties don't get access to. So I can imagine. So one of the things she showed is, and by the way, this is the things people ding Google for being creepy. My iPhone knows that I have a mint mojito every morning on my way to work. So suddenly Siri pops up saying, hey, you usually get a mint mojito at Phil's on the way to work. Would you like me to do that for you? That's creepy, but it's hideously useful. And I always thought it was useful with Google. So I'm glad to see Apple kind of giving in on all of this.
Yeah, So with that, it's interesting, like the way that a lot of people think of Siri, what Apple thinks of Siri. They think that it's just that voice that you talk to that can then give you the wrong answers back all the time or say it can't find an answer.
Yes.
But along with doing that, it also is how they sort of clump in all of their smart and machine learning and all that jazz kind of features where Siri can find contacts for you in your mail and then suggest that you add them to your contacts app. And yes, also things like calling your grandma whenever it's her birthday. So I see that it's in your calendar. If you tap this button, it'll automatically call. You can make that call. And things like automatically connecting, whenever it automatically connects to the Bluetooth in your car, then it will suggest that you want to open the podcasts app because maybe that's what you always listen to whenever you're in the car.
So that's Siri suggestions. And then there's also this kind of workflow stuff you can add your own. And this actually also looks like if this then that, right? I mean, it's kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm curious as to how much discussion there might have been about if this then that integration, or if this then that will have the ability as developers to give their app hooks into this feature.
I would hope so. I like the if this then that app.
Yeah, because remember that if this then that is multi-platform, multi-device, you can have an action that just works everywhere. It's an action it's a system that will basically what you have, no matter how you want it to interact with every other service or piece of hardware you have, from like light bulbs all the way to tracking chips, all the way to like Google Docs spreadsheets, you can make a solution with if this, that, and that. I know that this is we're only seeing not even the first version of this for Apple, but it comes across to me as a really, really cool and useful feature, but kind of limited. You're still limited to what developers want to expose to this feature and also what Apple wants to expose to developers. So I would hate for it to turn into like another version of Automator where without Apple's continued emphasis on how cool and how useful this is, people will might just forget that it exists and just never even really use it.
But and also, Andy, didn't they talk about Siri being able to integrate with apps too, that you could enhance? And this is something that really finally, because Siri has been kind of dopey. If app developers put the hooks in for Siri integration, they can make Siri smarter just by putting that out. You can make it smart by just putting that app on your phone.
Or
yes,
at
that's correct.
Or at least give extra functionality.
Right.
I don't know if making Siri smarter is
well. As an example, when Siri came out before Apple bought it, it worked with OpenTable. You could make reservations. So presumably OpenTable could add that to their app, and then Siri would be able once again to make reservations through OpenTable.
Well, that should have already been. I think that was already a Siri intent, as they're called, because there are other apps that can do reservations already. So that existed, I think, as of iOS 10, because there was ride sharing, there was payment apps, there was restaurant reservations, and a couple others. And the new Siri intents that were added as of iOS 12, those are the one. Now it's a little bit more open and a little bit more. The intents aren't as specific. So it's not like you can only use a pay app or you can only use a voice over IP app or these different things. Now it gets a little bit easier for developers to open up it's sort of like they have a name for it, but open up their apps to hook in with Siri, and then you'll get a little prompt inside of the app that you can tap on, and then it connects it with Siri. But yes, I could see if this then that doing that, because there are plenty of possibilities in these apps to just say, okay, I want this particular thing to be able to connect with Siri so that all I have to do is say this phrase and then Siri will do it. And I think in that sense, it maybe not makes Siri smarter, but it makes Siri more useful.
Right.
More customizable, more tailorable. I can't wait to play with this hands-on, because it seemed to me during the demos and what I've read afterward that there are a lot of ways this could go very, very wrong. I don't think anybody would want. Seriously, I don't think anybody would want their phone to, like, every time they wake up, hi, do you know that it's your cousin Myra's birthday? Do you want to send her a birthday email?
That's what Cortana does.
And by the way, this is usually the time that you check the ventilation ducts in the heating system. Also, isn't it time for your car to have an oil change? And it's Tuesday, but do you want to find out traffic reports for that coffee place you should go to? It's like, please just let me go back to sleep now. I really did. It was such a good keynote. I really did spend. As the kind of keynote I like, in which it gives me a lot to think about. And one of the things I was thinking about, particularly about this particular thing, was I wonder what the better solution is to give the user that level of control where they can take these building blocks and basically build this workflow themselves and make sure that it works for them. Or is it better to have something the way that the Google Assistant is trying to do it, which is just being able to say, like, hey, Guillermo, turn off all the lights, turn on the fan blower, and order me a coffee. I'm leaving the house and going to work. And basically, instead of having to actually write a list of instructions, be able to just simply say, here's what I want you to do. And then eventually an assistant saying, are you leaving the house? Do you want me to do what you did yesterday? It's an interesting way. I think control is underappreciated. I think that a lot of people, developers included, they like the flashiness of, hey, look how automated this is, when you can make a better solution if you just let people build themselves and take responsibility for fixing things that aren't going quite correctly. But interesting.
Can I move to watchOS? Have we covered macOS and I guess
not by half, but we covered all the cool stuff.
there's a lot to unpack, and of course, not all of it was even in the keynote. Or in the State of the
or even in the State of the Union. There was quite a, especially iOS did not get much attention at the State of the Union because I think there was so much to cover, and we didn't go super in depth again on some of those things, and specifically like the screen time sort of nanny state features that people were complaining.
Oh, we didn't mention that at all, did we?
Yeah,
we talked about it on iOS Today. This is, of course, in response to two things. One, obviously the shareholder revolt in January when two of the shareholders, JANA Partners and the California Teachers Retirement Fund, said you got to do something about how addictive your iPhone is. But also there's just this kind of current in the world. Google's doing almost exactly the same kinds of things. Yeah. And so this is good. A little more control, a little more information about how you're using your phone, even the ability to say you've used Instagram too much. Notice, by the way, in every case, it was Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube that were the problem children. I wonder why. watchOS, I think I have to say I have completely come around on the watch. I was very skeptical about it. I thought it was a toy, not very useful. But as each iteration came out, Apple made it a bit more useful, and now, with watchOS 5, which comes out this fall and will work on everything except the original Apple Watch. Bastards. Push to talk. They're putting a Nextel phone in your Apple Watch. That's wild.
I'm so worried about this one. It's a great feature. The ability to simply send a quick, have like a two-way conversation using just either your mobile broadband or Wi-Fi. That's fine. That's perfectly natural. But I know that I'm going to be on an Amtrak train and hearing, hi, well, I'm on the Amtrak train.
Well, that was the problem with Nextel.
Really?
Do you remember how annoying Nextel phones were?
God, I never came so close to pummeling a total stranger. Then you do realize that every 8 seconds I can hear, like, I don't want to text message them.
Yeah. And also I have the problem, probably a not unusual problem, that very few people I know wear an Apple Watch all the time. My wife does not. The one person I probably would use this with, now maybe it'll convince her to wear her Apple. She has an Apple Watch. Maybe it'll convince her to wear it. But that's who you use it with. Your closest colleagues or friends. It was used heavily on construction sites, that kind of situation. I think this is a brilliant use of the Apple Watch. A very interesting use.
It's fast. You do have to authorize specific people for incoming and outbound. So I think it'll be cool to watch.
You're right. It could be extremely annoying. Yeah. Podcasts. I'm happy that podcasts will now appear on the watch and let you actually listen directly through the watch. Pocket Cast has been able to do it. Third-party apps have been able to do that. I think Overcast too. But now Apple's podcast will do that. That's good. I'm going backwards. Finally, it will notice that you're working out, which is something that Samsung's watches have done for a long time, and I've been wishing that Apple would do that because I always forget to start the workout till halfway through it. Now it will give you credit if you start halfway through, and it will even say, look, your heart rate's going up. It looks like you're working out. Would you like to start it? It's only for walking and
They'll be
running.
like, no, I'm just having a really bad anxiety
just
day.
anxious. Yoga. It'll have yoga. It'll have hiking. Better running features. Apple's in an interesting position because people are really serious runners. I think use Garmin and other more serious running watches. But this is slowly adding the features that some of these serious runners want, like rolling miles and pace notifications and things like that. Yeah,
I don't even know what most of that stuff means.
Yeah, me neither. Exercise. What's that?
but you're right. It really did. I think the Apple Watch is such a great story to keep following because they really didn't know what they knew what kind of a wristwatch they wanted to make that what would look like. They hadn't the slightest clue what they wanted the thing to do, and it really did take a few years for them to figure out that okay, people are going to be buying it as a really great fitness watch, and now they're finally, I think, with the new version, they're figuring out how to actually integrate apps with it in a way that makes more sense than here is a flock of a hive of bees. Each bee represents a different app that you have to scroll to and find because we do think you're going to want to do Instagram on your watch instead of taking your phone out of your pocket and having a much better experience. I really like their demonstration of the new next level actionable alerts from apps where it's a way to make sure if there's something that you need to respond to or that something has happened that you would normally take your phone out for. Now instead of just here's 3 buttons, yes, no, maybe. It really lets you do things like, no, I want to call a car right now. It's these things that would take you only about 10 seconds on your phone, but that 10 seconds is surrounded by time taking it out, time unlocking it, time getting to the app, time getting to the feature. So I think that a lot of people who had this common sense not to buy version 0 of the watch are going to find that this is another. Okay, well, I probably should buy a new one anyway. Okay, fine. But I think that a lot of people are going to. I think that a lot of people who bought the watch early, I'd love to see a graph of how many days out of the year it's spent inside a drawer versus how many days out of the year it's spent on a wrist. And that curve has been going up and up and up. And now it's almost one. I think with this version, it could almost get to 1-to-1. Not just for a fashion watch, but for this is worthwhile for me to have spent hundreds of dollars on this and to have to still charge it every couple of days.
No,
Andy,
absolutely.
you're exactly right about that. I had the Series 0 watch because I got it, day one. As soon as it shipped, it was in my hands and I was ready to wear it. And over time, it went into a drawer, it didn't go in a drawer. It sat on its charger on my nightstand for multiple days, and I go, oh yeah, I better put this on. It would go on, go off, go on, go off. I had a big heart thing happen where I ended up in the emergency room a couple times.
Oh, no.
And so in order to continue to track that information, I wanted to upgrade my Apple Watch because the most recent one had more heart tracking and sort of the heart rate variability and stuff that I've talked about before. When I upgraded to this watch, I wear this thing all the time, every day, all the time. And it's not just because of those heart rate things, but also because of everything else that Apple has added to it. So I think that you're dead on there. Like the Series 0 watch was fun, but I ended up just sort of forgetting about it. And this one, it's not one of those things where I look down at my wrist and go, oh yeah, I guess I forgot to put that on. It's I move out of my bedroom and then I realize, oh no, I forgot to put my Apple Watch on. I need to go back and strap it on.
Yeah, it's become my pocket pat now.
There you go.
My pocket pat.
That is the ultimate test. You know that it's finally successful. If not just that, but if it's like if you're on the street about to get into your car, like I'm wearing my Casio G-Shock watch. It's worth relocking my car, going back inside, and getting my Apple Watch. That's how much I rely on it now.
It's also, I think, a cautionary tale that it's that one shouldn't always judge Apple on the first version of anything or any technology company.
Yeah, any company.
That sometimes iteration can produce a really great product over time, and I think the Apple Watch was less than useful initially, and I agree with you both. It's now I know. I wear it every day, and it is worthy of going back to get. They did add one feature I'm very worried about. I'll have to wait and see how this works. Smarter Siri. You only have to raise it to your wrist for it to respond. What? How's that going to work? I raise it to my wrist to look at what time it is.
I was writing during this, so I was writing about something else during this, so I didn't even know that this was a feature. So this is the first time I'm hearing.
Here's what they write on the page: raise to speak. You no longer need to say, "Hey Siri." Just raise your wrist.
And just say
what? And start talking. Siri actually on the watch activates too often already. But and not enough, both simultaneously when I don't want it and never works when I do want it.
I agree with that because the part you first said, I was like, no, not really. But yes, I agree.
It activates
too much and not enough.
Yeah, too much and not enough. Somebody's saying in the chat room, and I do agree, I feel really bad for the people who spent $17,000 on a solid gold original Apple Watch that will not be upgraded.
I don't think I feel sorry for them.
I think anybody who spends $17,000 on a solid gold gadget watch, they probably like 8 days after they took it out of the box, they gave it to one of their kids who strapped bottle rockets to it and blew it up in the driveway.
They've already melted it down.
That was the market they decided they wanted to go for. Not education, not middle and lower income buyers. Yeah. They wanted to get people who would buy a watch they absolutely don't give a damn.
They wanted Pharrell. They wanted Beyonce. That's what they wanted. They wanted Justin Timberlake. Actually, there's a new show on I think it's HBO called Succession about very, 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 very rich people. Basically, it's Rupert Murdoch and his children, but it's fiction. And at one point, it's the birthday for the old guy, and this is not a spoiler. It's just a moment you want to look for if you watch it. And one of the son-in-laws desperately is trying to give him a nice gift, and finally pins him to the wall because he's been avoiding him and says, I wanted to get you something special. And it's a beautiful box inside. It's a Patek Philippe. He opens it up and says, it's a Patek Philippe. And the guy says, yeah, I know. It says that in the lid. And then he says, thank you. No, he never even says thank you. He just gives it to his amanuensis sitting there on his left. And it ends up at the end of the show on the wrist of like the groundskeeper at the baseball field. And I think you're exactly right. I think people who could spend $17,000, although $17,000 is a tiny amount compared to what a lot of these watches. I'm sure that Patek Philippe was a $100,000 watch. Yeah, which is ridiculous.
You do raise a good point. I'm always a little bit skeptical, a little bit, I don't know, judgmental of commentators who say, "Oh, this is classic of how Apple doesn't get it. And they never should have done this to begin with." Whether you're talking about a Google product or an Apple product or whatever, it does take a while to. People work really, really hard on it. They do know what they're doing, but they don't know what they've got until they see 1 million people using this, and they can figure out what they've really got. That said, we can be critical of, again, launching a product that really had no focused purpose.
No upgrade, as it turns out.
But that was I did get 3 years out of it, 4 years out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but if you spent $17,000, that might not be enough. It's not exactly. Let's put it this way: not exactly an heirloom.
So basically that watch is the Fire Festival of Apple products.
Yes.
It's for an idiot who even spent the money to begin with. You bought it for the wrong reasons.
So we can wrap it up by talking about tvOS. I feel bad because Apple's ambitions obviously were to make the Apple TV the set-top box. They even alluded to that. You know, they want to replace that ugly cable box, the Scientific Atlanta cable box underneath your TV, with something more powerful and something that does a better job. The cable companies historically have never wanted this. They say, no, it's our selling advantage. It's our distinguishing feature is the interface to our cable box. It's where we put ads for other products. We're not giving that to Apple.
Why would we want to make it easier for our customers to buy movies and rent movies from someplace other than us?
Yes, precisely. Exactly. So, nevertheless, it hasn't stopped Apple from, keeping, the Apple TV app. That's really what it's about, is a centralized cable company style interface. Apple keeps talking about putting live news and sports programming on the Apple TV. They talked about it again yesterday. And they even showed a Scientific Atlanta set-top box and said, this is the better set-top box. And then they had to admit, and only Spectrum Charter is going to be using it. And there's not a chance in hell anybody else, including your cable company, will go near this. So if you're good news, if you're on Spectrum, get an Apple TV. I don't even understand why Spectrum agreed to that.
Yeah, that was my question. Like, how did you get them? How'd you convince them?
Yeah, there's no way Comcast or Cox or anybody else is going to go for it.
It's a weird product. I'm not talking about how well or poorly they have built this thing, because not only are they facing the cable companies don't want to replace their set-top boxes. Now, if you spend more than 28 cents on a new TV, it comes with Netflix apps and YouTube apps. It might even come with like essentially an entire Roku stick built in. So they're gonna have to come up with a really compelling sell for people that here is what the Apple TV can deliver that a $40 4K stick can't. They got one. You may not care, but they have Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. They're the only streaming device that does both. That's HDR and the new surround sound that comes from up there, too.
Yeah.
Comes from above you. Atmos is awesome, though. I was very skeptical about Atmos. Scott Wilkinson, our home theater guy, kept saying, no, it's great, Leo. I finally, we have an Atmos theater finally in Petaluma, and if I can, I'll always go to see like Infinity War or Black Panther in the Atmos theater because it really does sound great. And I'm at this point going to probably now buy an Atmos. I need 2 extra speakers to fire up. So I'm probably going to upgrade to Atmos. And that's great. That's a nice feature of the Apple TV if you're into good audio, I guess. Small market.
Well, this is a market I don't really understand. And as an outsider, I kind of wonder if someone has already invested in Atmos, are they going to be satisfied with an Apple TV?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I am. My 4K HDR TV looks really good with the Apple TV. And what's great is you'll buy a movie or there's a movie you've bought and they've automatically upgraded it. I bought a 1995 movie the other day, Heat, and it's 4K HDR. That somebody took the time to make a really nice, not Blu-ray, but 4K HDR, and it looks spectacular. So no, the Apple TV is a great adjunct to a high-end TV. And if you have an Atmos speaker system, I think it will even make it more appealing. So yeah, you're going to have the Blu-ray box, but I don't want to buy discs anymore. That's not, I have a UHD Blu-ray player, but I buy discs for like something if it's really worth it. The other thing that they promised is zero sign-on. This is something, again, if you use Apple TV and you have a cable company and you use Showtime Anytime or HBO Go, you know that it seems like every time you sit down and watch one of these over-the-top apps on your Apple TV, it says, okay, now you got to reauthorize, which means to log into the cable company and then hand off, and then you got to enter a code, and it's a real pain in the butt. Zero sign-on will be great. It will only work with Charter Spectrum. Because the cable company has to cooperate. And guess what? They're not.
You think with just sign-on they would. Why not that?
Well, they do cooperate. Actually, for a while, I couldn't use... what was it? I think I couldn't use HBO Go on Roku because my cable provider, Comcast, said, no, you can't use a Roku. You got to watch. But they finally, I guess, made a deal. Dopey.
Agreed.
That's fine. I think that's a good reason for many people to like switch from their current cable provider to Charter because it's a competitive
you can't
market.
Switch.
They're usually 4 or 5 cable companies competing for your business.
I know. I hate that.
You're right.
It's a monopoly. Right. You get what you get, and you should be happy. Happy. All right. You have to be excited. Do you not have an Apple TV, Andy? Clearly you don't.
I do.
Oh, you do. You have to be excited about the new NASA screensaver. Okay.
That's nice.
I tried.
I don't keep my TV on long enough for those screensavers to like. If I go and I watch a show, I watch the show and then I hold down the menu button and then hit the sleep thing and it shuts off my television and shuts off the Apple TV and shuts off the sound, all that stuff all at once. I don't keep it on long enough for it to go to those sleep screens. So the screensavers are cool, but they just I don't know. They don't really affect me much, I guess.
I hope that they have a large enough library now that I can actually in some app like at least have some influence, because there's some of these sky panoramas I've seen so many times that the only effect they have on me is I wonder how many like poor people villages were demolished to make one of those crazy stupid 800-story skyscrapers that were built by substandard slave labor. Like, okay, well, how about we see like the Arcadia Mountains? Okay, there you go. I'm happy.
Well, I guess, when you get to be my age, you spend a lot of time in the middle of shows getting up and going to the bathroom. So I see more of the screensavers probably than you young people.
There you go.
What I want is I want them to do like the NASA screensaver from the ISS, but through the cupola. And so I can actually see like the panes of glass, whatever's been like Velcro.
We did
to the
see
side.
an arm. They quickly cut away from it, but on the stream we saw an arm. So there will be.
Because I'm like you. The times where I'm watching the screensaver are when like something wakes me up at 1:30 or 4:30 in the morning, because I'm usually in bed by the crack of 2 a.m. I'm sorry, I was about to lie there. But it would be kind of cool for like those first 2 or 3 seconds. I'm in a darkened room and I'm seeing, because I got this big TV at the foot of my bed. I think, I'm on the International Space Station.
Ooh,
where are we? Oh, look,
I'm in the cupola.
We're above northern Africa.
Sure is a comfortable bed for a spaceship.
I've got experiments to run after I make my space burrito.
I'll tell you, I see more of the Apple TV screensavers on my Mac because you can.
Me too.
Yeah, I love it. It's and by the way, I just found out you can do it on Windows too. So here's the Great Wall of China, the Apple TV screensaver on a Surface Studio. How about that?
Well,
how about
I
that?
never.
Well, I never. I'm waiting for Apple to block this. Any minute now, I'm going to get a notice.
Wait
from
a minute.
Apple.
We sense that Leo is having fun and it's not monetizing any of our hardware. This must not stand.
No, Apple, I buy everything. I even bought a 10-core iMac Pro, Apple.
You almost bought a MacBook Air just wasn't like 2 days ago.
I'm on the verge. I'm on the edge of buying a MacBook Air. God, I don't know what I'm going to do about getting a laptop.
Chromebook.
I got that. No, I got that.
This isn't the time to start another hour-long discussion, but I had a situation with my MacBook where I was at the coffee shop and they gave me a cup of soda, but they didn't tell me that they gave me a cup that had like a hole in the bottom of it. So as soon as I poured, it like caused this like my laptop was fine. I snatched it up before like the leg reached that. But as I was like putting like more piles of like towels on the table and the seat to help them clean it up, I'm like, my God, if that MacBook had been aced out, I would be facing a really tough choice. And Micah, one of the things, as I'm thinking about that, maybe I would spend $500 on a really nice Chromebook to tide me over for a year while I decide. Well, I see what Apple does with MacBooks, and if I see that if there's like a ThinkPad that I would much rather have instead.
I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that Huawei MateBook Pro X Pro. That looks sweet. There's some really nice laptops
Asus,
out there.
I think, not coincidentally, Asus dumped a lot of new hardware yesterday. One of them was so interesting. It has a glass trackpad, a big glass trackpad like the MacBook, but the glass trackpad is actually an OLED HD screen. So you can like watch movies between your palms while you're working, or certain apps can like project buttons and stuff to it. I don't know how well that system would even work. But boy, if Apple decided to implement something like that, that would get my attention and maybe my $2,000 pretty quickly.
I thought I caught my attention too, Andy. I thought this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This is what the touch bar could have been. It's basically a touch bar, but where the trackpad is, and of course the trackpad's glass. There's no reason for it not to be a screen. I don't know. Cool. I'm very tempted. This looks like a very nice laptop as well.
It's expensive though. It is pricey. It is spendy.
Well, they didn't say a price, did they? Oh yeah, it starts at $2,300. Yeah,
starts at that's the cheap one. That's the one without the air conditioning and only the AM/FM factory radio.
Starts shipping in mid-July, so I have time to save my pennies. The UX 580. It's got a 1080 display where the trackpad is 5.5-inch 1080p display, and it's a 4K display itself. Asus makes nice gear.
Forgive me if it's ignorant. Why not Microsoft Surface? thingy, Surface Book or Surface.
Well,
I
this
don't know
is
what
a
they're called.
Surface. This is a Surface. I think that
for a laptop, how come you don't go with
Here's
that?
the beauty. I have several of them. The beauty of the Windows ecosystem, something alien, I'm sure, to you, Micah Sargent, is there are like thousands of manufacturers, and each of them has a different take on what a laptop or a desktop should be. And and I love the varied ecosystem. The problem is I hate Windows 10. I'd so much rather use Mac. But Windows 10 isn't as bad as it used to be, and so I kind of bite the bullet. And
that Surface Studio is just so.
Isn't this is awesome?
I love it.
And to be honest, that helps out Mac users as well, because Apple, as we've seen in so many iOS features that got shown off yesterday, they are paying attention to what other companies are doing. If there's if there's a feature that they think is working great, they say, "All right, that's great. Let's move and let's do it ourselves." Craig Federighi, when he was talking to Wired about the new Marzipan sort of features, was asked about how about does iOS code running on Macs mean that you're moving towards like a touchscreen Mac? And he was saying he was able to say explicitly that no, we haven't seen touchscreen on Windows machines done in such a way that makes us think, ooh, we should have that on the Mac.
He's so wrong. It's just
I disagree, but I disagree. Excuse me, I disagree with him as well. I agree with you, but the fact that Windows, because this is an Apple and Mac based podcast, the fact that there's so many crazy mutations walking out there, it does allow Apple to look at that and say,
to see what's going on.
Maybe that we don't want to do touchscreen, but maybe this idea of having a screen that folds a little bit more is kind of interesting. They have to everyone inside Apple has to use Apple products. So if they are ever envious of someone with a ThinkPad, that feature on the ThinkPad will get discussed internally. You can be sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, reason I don't buy a Surface Book, to answer your question, I had a Surface Book, not such good hardware, and I don't like detachable keyboards. I want a real keyboard. I pretty much stick with Lenovo's. This is the new Asus, and by the way, this also has the i9 processor. And it has the Optane, and then it has this weird. Now this is just a weird thing, but I hated the touchpad, and maybe this is just another touchpad, but at least your fingers are already there.
Yeah, and see, I'm all about that sort of external. I know it's not external, but that sort of that shortcut type thing. I've thought about getting one of those Elgato Stream.
I have a Streamcast. I love it.
They're so cool.
But I only use it for one thing, playing sound effects on the radio show. So it's not all that useful, but it's pretty cool. Hey, we got to take a break. We got to get going here. Steve Gibson's champing at the bit to do security now. We're going to get your picks in a second. Prepare your picks, my friends. But first, let's talk about something Apple owns for a change. Texture. Texture is it's Netflix for magazines. It's awesome. I'm a magazine fan. I know magazines have been around for a long time, but I just feel like some of the best writing, the best journalism that's going on now is done in The Atlantic and The New Yorker and Wired magazine, in Rolling Stone. In fact, every week or every month, there's something I want to read in one of those magazines. If I were to subscribe to them all, well, not only would it cost me a lot of money, but my coffee table would buckle under the weight of all that paper. Texture is so much better. It's 100, 200 of the best magazines in the country. All the ones I mentioned, National Geographic, Shutterbug, Macworld, PC Magazine, and it's just $10 a month. Unlimited access. You get every page. It's in the newsstand edition. You get back issues. You get features you can't do in print, like video. And if you like photography, when you look at pictures in Shutterbug or National Geographic, on Texture, you're not getting some kind of badly printed screened version of the picture. You're getting all the details. You can zoom in. You can pixel peep. It's fantastic. All recipes, lots of cooking stuff. Sunset. There's magazines. I probably wouldn't subscribe to Sunset, but there's always something interesting in there. Ad Age, Billboard magazine. It's really fun to look at the Hot 100. I'm not going to subscribe to Billboard or even buy a single issue just to do that, but it's there so I can look at it whenever I want to. Texture is amazing. It's the magazine app. Unlimited access to more than 200 of the best magazines all in one place. Get complete issues, get back issues, anytime, anywhere, all in one app. Stay connected to the biggest and best stories today with Texture. And right now you can try it free for a week. I want you to do this. Give it a try. Texture.com/twit. Why wait to start reading the latest issues of your favorite magazine? Get them immediately, unmangled by the U.S. Postal Service at texture.com/twit. Texture.com/twit. I think there's one magazine I still subscribe to because it's just wearing out. All the other magazines, I just let the subscriptions wear out, and I use them on Texture. It's fantastic. Fantastic. And Mikah Sargent, you got a pick for us?
I do. This is I know I talked about Mophie before on, I don't remember what show, but I really dig Mophie's wireless charging capabilities, and they just came out with something called the Charge Stream Travel Kit. And in this little pack, it's got like a nice little buckle on it, comes a cord for plugging in the charger, as well as an in-car port so that you can plug it in your vehicle, and then one for the nightstand at the hotel. And last but not least is the Charge Stream Mini. Now, this is a wireless charging pad. And what I like about it is not only does it's kind of angled, so whenever it sits flat on your desktop, you can put the phone on top of it, and it kind of it's angled so you can see what's on it. But my favorite thing, I don't know why, I'm a big nerd for micro charging. What is it? Micro foam. It's like micro suction foam that's right here on the top. And so it holds onto your phone really nice. So I've noticed that, when I sit my phone down on it, despite that angle, like, you feel as soon as you sit it down. And why that's important is if you're laying in the dark or something like that, or you are traveling and you can't quite look at your phone, you feel whenever it makes that connection. And it's pretty good about not needing perfect placement. As long as you sort of get it somewhere in the middle there, then it will latch onto the device and start to charge it. The one thing that I will note about it is only 5 watts of wireless charging, so it will take a while to fully charge up your device. But if you're just using it for overnight, or you're kind of having it sitting around to just be a place to drop off your phone for a second, it's pretty nifty. And like I said, it's brand new, so it's $50 for the whole kit and caboodle, and I quite like it.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. Andy and Notco, what's your pick of the week? Oh, we've muted you. I can't hear you.
Oh,
Andy.
no.
I can't hear you. Andy, unmute.
Sorry, my pardon.
There we go.
Yes. My pick of the week is not brand new, but it was the first Bluetooth speaker that actually got my attention and got my love after I bought it. This is the Anker SoundCore Nano. It's about the size of the kind of marshmallow they sell for toasting in front of campfires. So we're not talking, but that's still impressive. So we're not talking about room filling HomePod type sound. But I found so many uses for this. Number one, yes, it's so tiny that why not just have it in your laptop bag? I certainly always have it with me when I travel, so I can definitely hear music in my hotel room bathroom without having to crank it up in the main room and annoy the neighbors. The sound is surprisingly good, even though again this is 2 inches wide. It is has bass, it has texture to it. It has enough loudness that it's actually, if it's anywhere in the room with you, it will definitely be a better thing. If you've got it just next to your keyboard on your laptop as you're working, that's just enough extra oomph to sort of give it to you. But the thing that really has made it almost an essential thing is that it is now what I always, if ever I'm going on a long bike ride and or a long walk and I want to listen to podcasts, I will actually just clip this to the shoulder of my laptop bag or of my backpack. And I don't have to crank it up. It's loud enough that I can certainly enjoy the music and enjoy the podcast, but both of my ears are not being covered up by headphones. So I feel like it's much safer, even safer than just wearing one of my AirPods and leaving my other ear free. And during the one day that was 87 degrees between 51 degrees and 38 degrees last week, I did go to the beach, and then I still used it there because I'm sitting at the beach. I'm reading my Kindle, and again, I don't necessarily want to have earplugs in my ears all the time because it's just uncomfortable. And I also don't want to crank up this huge Bluetooth speaker and annoy everybody. I just want to be able to enjoy my music or my audiobooks or whatever. And the fact that it's only like $16, you can take a Flutter on that for $16. It's an Anker device, so it's really well made. Just one button. I don't think it's waterproof, but it's rubberized on the back, so I've had it outside, like not in pouring rain, but certainly in the sort of like drizzly sort of stuff, and it survived that really nice. The battery is not going to last you a day and a half like some of the bigger Bluetooth devices will, but it'll last at least 4 or 5 hours, and it will also work as a microphone if you're using it as a speakerphone. So basically, again, it's small enough that, hey, I may as well take it with me. It's cheap enough that, hey, I may as well buy it. And it's one of those things where once it was inside my office, it turned out to be exactly the right solution for so many different things. So that's why it's available in silver and black. Operator standing by.
Nice to have a speakerphone that size. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, again, it's just the right size. I don't need something the size of a loaf of bread. I certainly don't have room to pack something the size of even a sandwich roll when I'm trying to avoid $50
barbecue marshmallow size. Yeah, nice.
Love it.
I've been using this service for a long time, and I think I finally really want to tell. I've told people about it before, but it's cross-platform. It's called Keybase, and I know you know about this market, Micah, because I saw you just joined it. So I originally went to Keybase because it was a way to kind of maintain your PGP key to make it public. It allowed you, if I log in or go to keybase.io/Leo Laporte, I can see, kind of verify Leo Laporte. You can see all the websites that are verifiably mine. You can get my, if you want, you can get my public key there, so you can send me encrypted email or verify my email, because I use PGP to sign my email. But Keybase has gotten really useful in a lot of ways. And the thing that kind of convinced me to tell you about it is Microsoft buying GitHub. I know that sounds a little weird, but there are a lot of people who are fleeing GitHub and looking for other ways to do Git. And one of the things Keybase has had for some time, which is very interesting, is an encrypted file system. By the way, this is completely free, open source. They're commissioning a third-party audit so you can verify, there's Micah Sargent, I ought to follow him. When you follow somebody on Keybase, that means when their PGP key changes, you'll get a notification. You can privately chat them. In fact, it has very Slack-like chat capabilities, which is kind of neat. And it's it's free. You can create a team chat. So if you have a bunch of people on a team, I should tell you about this, Carson, because I'm alone on the Twit staff team chat, fully encrypted, history forever. It's pretty interesting. But the reason I've been excited about it is with GitHub disappearing, it is a really great way to use Git. Now, this isn't for publicly posting your software. This is for teams and individuals who want to use a repository for, not just for code. I use it for code and for my dot files. Dot files are a good example. Dot files are the setup files that I use on Linux machines and on Macs that configure everything. And in there are my SSH keys and my PGP keys, because when I get a new machine, I want those all installed. Well, I wouldn't want to put those publicly on GitHub or GitLab or anywhere, but I do want them on a Git server so that I can update it from different sources, and I can make sure it's always up to date, and I can get it whenever I install on a new machine. So putting it here is great because it's trust no one encryption. No one has access to it, even the Keybase folks. It's encrypted using my PGP key. Nobody else can access it, but I can use it. I can use Git to access it and modify it. I also put financial records, things I don't want anybody to see, completely encrypted, but I want them available on other machines. Tax records, passport images, things like that. Really a nice program and absolutely free. Keybase.io. And there's a lovely picture of you, Micah.
Thanks.
It's really kind of, I think it's a hidden gem. I think a lot of people don't know about it, and they really ought to. It is a very useful tool. It's completely cross-platform, Windows, Mac, Android, and iOS, and of course Linux. I've installed it on everything I use, and I get all of these benefits and a lot more, and they're really getting bigger. Chris Coyne created it. He took the money he made when he sold OkCupid and SparkNote.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, he was a founder, and he took the money, said, you know what, I'm going to do something for the public good. And he did this completely open source and free. I imagine at some point, because they have an encrypted file system, they might start charging for that, because right now I'm getting free storage from them, which is awesome. It's kind of an amazing free service, and I highly recommend people take a look at it. Keybase.io, and yes, of course, it works on the Mac and iOS. We're done, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Andy Ihnatko. Find him at ihnatko.com or on the Twitter. Anything you want to plug?
Let's see. I was on my public radio show yesterday again. So we're news about Facebook, news about Amazon security, lots of news and other why people aren't using phones and all the kind of stuff. Just go to wgbh.org and click on Boston Public Radio, and you'll be able to hear the live stream, a recording of the stream from yesterday.
And incidentally, he has a great podcast called Material. It's available at relay.fm. I always like to give you a plug for that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mikah Sargent, who is also a podcaster and senior editor at Mobile Nations. What else do you want to plug?
I'm going to plug my show again. It's called Lucid. You can go to lucid.show to check it out. It is a sleep science and dream interpretation podcast that I do with my good friend Tori Folk. We get dreams sent in from listeners, and we interpret them on the show and have a good time talking about that, and then talking about all sorts of sleep science. Yeah, the most recent episode is called Decadent Oatmeal Feelings, and it was about Ambien and other sleep drugs.
Oh.
And none of them make you racist.
But they do look somewhat like the new Apple Notes.
Yes, it does. Yes, oddly, it looks like a dark oatmeal color.
I gotta listen, because I'm fascinated by this whole subject. I can't wait. Lucid.
You should, and send in a dream. We'd love to interpret one of your dreams.
Oh no, you don't want to.
So other people have said that too. No, you don't want one of my dreams. Well, we'll see. You should listen though. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the conclusion of this fine podcast. I'm so glad you were here. You can always watch and listen live at twit.tv/live. We do it about 11 a.m. Pacific. That would be 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You can also, if you're going to be live, join the chat room, irc.twit.tv. A bunch of nice people in there. Always a lot of fun. If you want to be in studio, welcome to our studio audience. Nice bunch of people. All you have to do is email tickets at twit.tv. We'll put a chair out for you. Now, if you can't be here in studio and you can't listen to the stream, fear not. We don't mind. You're welcome to use the on-demand versions of our show. They're available from the website, as are all of our shows. twit.tv/MBW for MacBreak Weekly. twit.tv/MBW. Or subscribe in your favorite podcatcher, and you'll get it automatically the minute it's available. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next week. But now I'm afraid I have to say it's time to get back to work, because break time is over.